Today, we are going to talk about last week's episode, Maki's Massacre of the Zenin Clan, which I believe may genuinely be the best single episode of anime I have ever seen in my entire life. I think this is a genuine masterpiece, and I want to break it down for you. And we're going to do that in two sections. First, I want to talk about the characters, story, and the point I think Gege is trying to make by including this massacre. We're going to, literary analysis style for that part. And then the second part, I want to talk about artistic decisions like the art style, certain shots, and writing in terms of craft and how the scenes are presented to create the effect they have on us as viewers. So yeah, let's start off with understanding the story stuff, and to do that, we've got to understand the Zenin Clan. So, the sorcery clans are based on real clans in Japanese history. This is a super simplified version of this whole explanation, but basically in ancient Japan, there were clans that controlled the government from the shadows, and they amassed massive wealth, building their power around controlling land and maintaining political connections. They ran culture, religion, politics, everything for a really long time, in particular during the Heian era, which is why so much of JJK ties back to that period. And fun fact, the most powerful clan during this time, the Fujiwara clan, will actually get mentioned in a few episodes. It's coming up soon. I got more into that in my video about power and politics in JJK, but that got taken down because of copyright, so watch that when it goes back up to learn more. Okay, but what is the deal with the clans in Jujutsu Kaisen specifically? Well, we know they've been around for a really long time and that they're connected to the government and the governing bodies of the Jujutsu world. They get a say in decisions like executing Yuji, and they are incredibly wealthy and respected. But why? Well, we know that sorcerers are subsidized by the government, more specifically by Jujutsu Headquarters, which seems to be a secret branch of the Japanese government that sets up rules for Jujutsu sorcerers and gives out their missions. They pay sorcerers to fight off curses and keep Jujutsu a secret from the general public. In a way, you can think of sorcerers like soldiers in a war against curses, and their grade kind of would be like a military rank that earns them harder missions and more money. In this way, we can almost think of the clans like weapons manufacturers, I guess. They have extremely powerful hereditary techniques. We see blood manipulation, the 10 shadows, and infinity, which they breed into their bloodlines incestually. And they have large pools of resources like, cursed tools and financial assets that can be used to keep cursed spirits and cursed users at bay. So the military might they provide is really valuable. And it's why they have so much power in the Jujutsu world. And this is, interestingly, also the reason the Zenin clan was cruel to Toji. We know Toji was rejected and mistreated in the same way Maki was as a kid, but it's kind of confusing considering he's so powerful. It seems like the Jujutsu equivalent of Lockheed Martin meets the Rothschild family would like a powerful warrior like this. But there's a hang-up. These powerful Jujutsu families are all conservative. American politics set aside, but not really, it'll come up. This word means something a little different than maybe what you're thinking right now. Just strictly definition-wise, the word conservatism refers to the commitment to traditional values and ideals with opposition to change or innovation. In JJK, Gojo says Gakuganji, the clans, and headquarters / the higher-ups are conservatives, and really what all of these people have in common in JJK's story is that they are in positions of power. They are at the top of the hierarchy of Jujutsu society. And the thing about being at the top of society is that if things change, you can only go down from where you currently are. I might be over-explaining what I'm saying here, but thinking about it like a random number generator. There's 10 people, and they each randomly get a number 1 through 10. And this number equals how many millions of dollars they get. So 10 gets 10 million, 1 only gets a million. The room can either choose to spin this random number generator again or keep the numbers they got. I think it's safe to say that in this situation, numbers at least 7 through 10 will probably try really hard to make sure no one gets to spin that random chance ever again, that they leave with the amount of money they already have. Toji represents spinning that random chance. He's a powerful sorcerer who has no ability to use sorcery because of his heavenly restriction. The traditional system of Jujutsu society in which the clans hold massive power and authority relies on the need for strong Jujutsu sorcery. Toji offers a different alternative to the power of Jujutsu sorcery, another version of what it could mean to be strong. But since the Zenin have built their power around Jujutsu specifically, other kinds of strength are threatening to them. They don't ridicule Toji because they don't see the value in his strength. They ridicule him because they don't want his power to disrupt theirs. And this is also the case for Maki, so she's not exactly greeted warmly when she returns to the clan. We'll circle back to her mom and dad in more depth later, but when Maki returns to the Zenin clan to pick up some cursed tools for the upcoming culling games, her father Ogi is waiting for her with a half-dead Mai. Ogi beats Maki in a duel and then throws both of his own daughters to die in a pit of curses. In Season 1, Maki and Mai are at odds because Maki decides to leave the clan to become a sorcerer. She's sick of being treated as inferior to the men around her, sick of having to be their servant, sick of having to walk in their shadows. Maki wants a life that's her own. One day, when she's old enough to start at Jujutsu High, she declares to Naobito that she will leave the clan and will one day return and take his job as clan leader. Naobito punishes her rebellion through his connections to other powerful people in Jujutsu society, which is the reason Maki can't get promoted beyond grade 4 as a sorcerer despite her being pretty strong, and he ropes Mai in on her punishment as well. His reason for trying to stop Maki from succeeding as a sorcerer in this way is similar to the reason the clan had such negative attitudes toward Toji, but not the exact same. Her powers are the same as Toji's, just weaker. This means that Naobito knows at the very least how powerful an awakened version of her could be, and even if he doesn't know how or what the difference is between her and Toji, which I honestly believe is unlikely because the sisters know, but that's besides the point. Really, the bottom line still is, Naobito knows she could be very powerful. I mean, they just saw this story play out and could have changed their practices around heavenly restriction users after seeing the monster they created in Toji. Even if she's not as strong, Maki could still prove to be very useful to the clan. And if not useful, she could theoretically one day present a risk. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But for a conservative who has built their personal power on ancient ideas and practices, conceding to any change is conceding to the possibility of others in the future. As we established, someone at the top of the hierarchy doesn't want that hierarchy to change. If things like tradition and the way things have been done in the Zenin clan become challengeable ideas, Naobito becomes a challengeable authority. He only has power because enough people decide to obey the higher-ups of the Zenin clan and work under them. And if tomorrow they all decided he's wrong about things and they don't have to listen to him anymore, he would lose all of his power immediately. So even if it has been directly proven wrong, the system cannot be challenged. But where Maki and Toji differ is, of course, in the matter of gender. Where Toji's strength kind of passively defies the nature of a sorcery clan, Maki actively defies them by standing up for herself as a woman. The Zenin clan is extremely sexist, a nod to their antiquated ways and conservative ideals. Women in an extreme patriarchal society like this are treated as a kind of pseudo-slave class, forced to do manual labor in the house, follow strict social patterns, and essentially offer their bodies for breeding as deemed necessary by the men who control them. They have no rights to self-determination, and their value is measured only in their attractiveness and ability to serve a man. This is basically what Naoya is yapping about in the scene that he gets introduced in episode 1. In this way, Maki's unwillingness to be subservient makes her doubly threatening compared to Toji, as she defies Jujutsu society and the patriarchal society. Maki represents what happens when people look at the conservative social structures that they've been wrapped into, and they say, "This system is unjustly cruel to me, so I will not obey it." This isn't easy though. It takes bravery, and it's why we get this flashback of Maki being bullied by Naoya. It is a very literal representation of the way this clan and our society in real life tries to beat these rebellious impulses out of our young women. In fact, that's what's happened with Mai. Mai was forced to try and become a sorcerer after Maki left, but she says in season 1 that she never even wanted to do that. No matter how bad the Zenin clan is, Mai basically says she'd rather suck it up and do her chores as long as she doesn't have to risk her life fighting curses. In her mind, the risk of challenging the system outweighs the harms of remaining in it, or at least she's been convinced of this. Mai asks Maki why Maki won't just, quote, stay at the bottom with her and live these horrible but technically safe lives, serving and being married off to these terrible men. Mai has been convinced that the safest path through is obedience, but Maki basically says that path is one to a life that she could not bear living, so staying and facing that abuse might as well mean dying for her. A viewer on the Power and Politics video pointed out something about their dynamic that I think was interesting, or at least phrased it in a way that I think is really useful. The sisters are like two children dealing with an abusive parent, which is, I guess, not technically a metaphor, because that's, true, but also, a good metaphor still for this conversation, albeit at risk of me speaking about a sensitive topic I know little about. Basically, though, Maki's survival strategy for handling her abusers is to fight back and make herself too difficult of a target to be easily picked on. My strategy, on the other hand, is to handle the abuse by attempting to appease her abusers, obeying them and trying to keep them happy so that they have no reason to pick on her. These are both understandable and very real responses, but the sisters never really get a chance to reconcile which one was actually the best option for them. In the chamber, the two are on the verge of death when they enter this kind of spiritual limbo death space, which might be Mai's innate domain or soul or something like that. There's been much made of the geese symbolism and perfect preparation or whatever. I won't beat a dead horse with that one. Maybe somebody can explain what that means in the comments. But Mai basically says at this moment that she's gonna allow herself to die in order to unlock Maki's full potential. So, as we know, Maki has a heavenly restriction just like Toji, but it's clear her physical abilities were not boosted nearly as much as his were. Mai reveals that this is because twins have special properties in Jujutsu society, and Jujutsu basically views twins as one individual. It's an interesting concept, maybe referential to like the scientific idea that identical twins are genetically the same person, but that's besides the point, I guess. Heavenly restriction is a pact imposed on someone from the moment they're born, in which the cursed technique and cursed energy they would have normally been granted is stripped from them. In exchange, they receive supreme physical abilities. But since the forces of Jujutsu can't differentiate between Maki and Mai as individuals, the pact sorta gets unfulfilled since Mai's curse technique and curse energy weren't stripped away. So it's almost like there was nothing lost, so there could be nothing gained kind of situation. Maki's pact just can't be completed until Mai dies, and Mai knows this. Before she goes, she turns herself into a cursed tool, and she leaves Maki with some powerful last words, telling her to destroy everything. This is Mai's first and last act of defiance. For so long, she hid herself, she obeyed orders, and she tried to remain safe from the punishment and the scrutiny of the clan. But now, she is literally willing to discard her life for a chance to, in some way, fight back. She's showing solidarity for the women stuck in the same situation as her. She's standing next to Mai and proudly pushing back against the power that abused them. And it's really meant to show us the power of solidarity in groups of oppressed people, how important unity is, how weak Maki is standing alone compared to how strong she becomes when Mai decides to get in and support her as well. Mai's last act is brave and beautiful, and it turns Maki into the ultimate weapon against the power structure that killed her. I also want to say here, God, what a fucking heart-wrenching performance from the mom and the sisters' voice actors. It's genuinely spectacular from all three of them. I really hope they win some awards for this or something. It's just like unbelievable stuff. Anyway, in mere moments, Maki has killed all the curses in the pit and is outside going after Ogi. We get this iconic moment where Ogi realizes she's turned into the same kind of being as Toji, and I think it confirms a lot of stuff for us. For one, it shows the clan always understood how easily Toji could turn on them and how precarious of a balance they had with him. That's why Ogi's so, afraid. As for the other part of this, just keep it in mind for now, we'll come back to it. The forces of the Zenin are deployed to kill Maki, starting with the Kukuru unit, which is composed of the able-bodied men in the clan who are either totally not Jujutsu sorcerers or at least not real Jujutsu sorcerers, and their leader, Nobuyuki. These are the foot soldiers of the Zenin Clan, and this scene is where we get the whole Kill Bill thing, which is awesome. I have not watched Kill Bill, so I don't have too much to say about that, but I can at least say that the music choice, while it does feel a bit weird in the scene, is probably referential to the light tone of the music in Kill Bill. The song in that scene is Nobody But Me by Human Benz. We're going to talk more about specific shots, music choices, and art choices, and Naoya's technique later on in the second part. So if you're interested in more on that, we'll come back to some of this. But I just wanted to point that out because I think that was a big kind of weird thing for people, but it's definitely a part of the Kill Bill reference. That aside, it's also important to note that the Kukuru unit are victims of the Zenin power structure too, in their own way. They have low-tier regular human levels of cursed energy, so they can't participate in jujutsu-based power like Toji or Maki in many ways, and would have faced some degree of ridicule in a similar sense. They have to be subservient to the more powerful sorcerers of the Hei, the Zenin's elite fighting force, and so they end up being the frontline fodder sent into a massacre. This kind of underscores the fact that in patriarchal societies and communities, men are harmed too, as those who don't conform as closely to the culture's standards of masculinity can tend to be ridiculed by other men and placed lower on the social, political, and economic totem pole unjustly, though still above women. The Kukuru are totally decimated, and then the Hei and Nobuaki pull up. Maki totally smokes Nobuaki, which is just super violent and startling for reasons I'll describe in the craft section, but totally crazy. And then we get this awesome ass scene with Ranta and Jinichi. Ranta's technique, these eyes, which are holding Maki in place, really show how big of a gap in strength exists between them now. He dies literally just trying to slow her down. And then we get the infamous aura farming Jinichi moment. In my opinion, the slow walk up was a very intentional choice from the animators to show that Jinichi recognizes he's marching to his death. This is Toji's brother we're talking about here, so no one really would know better than him exactly how strong Maki is becoming. Ranta points out the comparison between the two while Jinichi walks up, and he's almost solemn as he's approaching Maki. To me, this made his attack feel more like an honorable suicide than a real attempt at winning. I mean, look at his face here. I also think back to the point about Ogi, Ranta saying what he does here, and Jinichi approaching like this all kind of lend themselves to this idea that the Zenin Clan really understood Toji's strength pretty well, and somewhere deep down they knew they were wrong for treating him the way they did, and they were wrong for rejecting the power, or at least that it was going to come back around to bite them one day. Jinichi is aura farming for sure, but I really do think he's just accepting the fact that ultimately the clan's mistreatment of its women and of Toji has come full circle, and he is being punished for the crimes that he's been a part of. Then Naoya appears, and we really get it cracking. Naoya has an obsession with Toji, idolizing his strength and his good looks. To Naoya, Toji is the picture of what a powerful man in the Zenin Clan should try to be, of what a powerful jujutsu sorcerer should try to be. I mean, he literally criticizes Jinichi for not being as handsome as Toji. This is next level glazing. And because of that, he's kind of showing that he hasn't even comprehended why Toji was rejected by the clan in the first place. And he's revealing that he doesn't understand much about the clan or his position in it in general. That really gets struck home here when Naoya says the sin of the insignificant is the ignorance of strength. Ironically, when he says this line, Naoya is ignorant to the fact that Maki has become exactly like Toji. Naoya is in denial, or maybe just too dumb to accept the change that Maki has undergone. Everyone else up to this point realized what had happened to her. Ogi clearly recognizes it immediately. We talked about Jinichi, and when Ranta says the Zenin Clan only exists because of Toji's whim, I think he's speaking literally, acknowledging the reality that they all understand. They only have the power they do because the people they've set beneath them haven't woken up to their own power and just overthrown them. The hierarchy the Zenin Clan sits atop of is extremely delicate, and Ranta knows, well, most of them seem to know, Toji could have knocked down that hierarchy with ease, and Maki is in the middle of doing that. Truthfully, I think Naoya's problem with his overconfidence in comparing himself to Toji and Gojo, and in thinking that he can beat Maki here, is that he hasn't recognized his own privilege. He has power in Jujutsu Society because his daddy was clan head, and he is a strong sorcerer because he was born with a strong technique. He didn't earn either of those things. But he regards Maki as a lower being because she wasn't born with the same blessings as him. This is why we see him be so over-the-top sexist and so firmly of the belief that he should be clan head. Naoya truly believes, to the bottom of his soul, that his born status relates to something innate within him and does really make him better than others. To go directly to politics here and stop beating around the bush, he's kind of like Elon in this way, right? Elon was born mega wealthy and used daddy's money to acquire companies and build wealth through ownership, ultimately with Tesla, of course. Elon didn't invent the electric car or some shit. His dad was just rich, and so he got to own the electric cars that someone else was making. But he thinks he's hot shit. And similarly, Naoya underestimates Maki until the very end, when she absolutely posterizes his bitch pussy ass and breaks his ugly face into a million pieces 4 times over like it's an ESPN top 10 play of the week, baby. This is beautiful shit. Beautiful. Naoya's foolish worldview is decimated in this one punch. He was never stronger than Maki. He never deserved what he had over her. And he finally has to pay for treating her the way he did. Ultimately, I think the takeaway we get from the massacre overall is that if these social systems supported by these conservatives do not serve the people and only serve to protect those already in power, we, as the people within the systems, have the responsibility and the power to overthrow them. In particular here, gender hierarchies that restrict women are built to keep women as a class of people who must serve the men around them. The men who propagate these antiquated gender hierarchies either understand why they exist and defend them to keep reaping the benefits, or they're too ignorant to recognize the strength present in the women around them, and they genuinely buy into their own propaganda, but ultimately, they will be made insignificant by the powerful, intelligent women who can ultimately operate in their spaces at higher levels. The last scene of the episode lies with Maki's mom. This shit is so creepy. Maki's like flat delivery of these lines and just going through the house, blood everywhere, terrifying shit. We got to go back to the storm room scene for a second here to understand what's going on. At first, it seems like their mom is in line with the rest of the clan. I mean, she certainly acts like it when we meet her here, but when Maki asks her mom why she yelled at her to not go into the cursed tool storeroom, Maki is pointing out that this isn't necessarily 100% true. In the original scene, it seemed like she was just hating on Maki like everybody else, but it takes on a new meaning now that we know Ogi was waiting in ambush for her there. Maki's mom was trying to warn her to run away. Her line in this scene, "Why must you always be like this?" turns to be, "Why must you always draw the attention of powerful men by resisting them instead of keeping the peace quietly like me and Mai and protecting yourself from them? Why do you always have to fight these people? You're going to die for it." Her mother genuinely wanted her to get away, to not have to be killed by her father. She always just wanted her to take on this life of subservience so that she could just survive. But despite recognizing this, Maki still mortally wounds her. Ultimately, her complicitness in the clan's actions just ran too deep, and Maki can't fully complete her vengeance without killing her too. Her mom still gets her get back on Naoya though, which ends up being a beautiful display of a woman who had been so firmly embedded in this system, finally being empowered to fight back and reclaiming ownership over her life in her final moments. Her last line here, "I'm so glad I gave birth to you," reverses her earlier statement and is really the sentiment of the voiceless women who are held captive in this system. Maki's mom's will to be free was subdued, but it wasn't fully destroyed, if a human's will to be free ever can be fully destroyed. She didn't really realize it, but she's been waiting for someone to do this her whole life. And in her final moments, she looks inward and realizes she couldn't be more proud of her daughters. Maki kills the rest of the Zenin's forces later on, and no, she doesn't kill non-combatants. People have been circling that around, but we see everyone on screen that she kills in the Zenin Clan, and then the report later on tells us that she kills the, other soldiers. The only reason there's deliberation of whether the Zenin Clan should be removed from the big three families is because the women and the children are still alive and technically constitute a family. If everyone was dead, they wouldn't even need to have that conversation. So for the people saying she just totally massacred everybody, that's not true. Okay, so that's the main portion of the story analysis. I hope you enjoyed that. Now we're into part 2, and part 2 will have very lowered editing quality. There will probably be a lot of times where I'll talk for 30 or 40 seconds with just one picture on screen. So, I just don't have a lot of time to edit this because of school. So if you're only here for the political and social analysis stuff, feel free to head out. Loved having you. Hopefully I'll see you soon. But if you want to talk some techniques, some art style stuff, some writing choices in terms of craft as opposed to narrative, stick around. I encourage you to take a break, grab some food, listen to this while you play a game or do some chores in the background, because this is, chill chat time. You will have to come back for the shot analysis though, I guess. Anyway, news segment. Let's go. So the first thing I want to talk about is what actually is projection sorcery, because I think Naoya's technique is one of the more confusing ones in the verse. Basically, what we get told about it is that Naoya defines his next 24 movements, and then he carries them out over the span of a second. And as long as these movements don't, super duper defy the laws of physics, he can carry them out. This references animation, as we hear from Naobito in season 2. And I think the reason it's called projection sorcery actually refers to a film movie projector, which plays frames of animation from a film reel one by one and projects light onto a screen. If you don't know how like a camera works like this, it's like the frames slide in front of the lens one by one, and then a light gets shot into the frame and it shoots out the lens and goes onto the screen. And if that happens 24 times in 1 second, it looks like, fluid movement to the human eye. You can't tell that it's 24 individual pictures. It just kind of looks like the characters are moving naturally. So basically, I think Naoya, in the same way, is projecting moves out of himself, like light hitting frames. So in this way, it's more than he's just fast. He's kind of using his jujitsu to launch his body through a series of positions across a predetermined space. He's not teleporting, but he's also not moving in the traditional sense. He's literally like shooting his body into different positions. And this is also why he's capable of accelerating so much, is because he's relaunching himself from a high speed with his initial inertia still behind him. So each projection can kind of shoot out of him at a higher and higher speed as long as he keeps his momentum up. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I think that the whole projection sorcery thing is about a camera. Also, on the topic of Naoya, a couple things that are interesting with him are his footwear and his accent. And I think both of those things are a reference to the Heian era as well. So the shoes that he wears, the like tie-on shoes that he wears in episode 1 and 2, and then these socks that we see on the piano here, the socks are called tabi. I can't remember what the shoes are called, but these socks and shoes were most popular during the Heian era. That's really when they came into cultural relevance. And his accent, the Kansai dialect he speaks in, is from the Kansai region of Japan, which includes Kobe, Osaka, and Kyoto, and the area around them. And during ancient Japanese history, the capital city was frequently in one of, the places where Osaka or Kyoto would be. In particular, the Heian era is named after a city, Heiankyo, which stood where Kyoto is today. So him talking in that specific way kind of calls back to this geographical history that he's a part of. The shoes and the voice reference this ancient clan system that Naoya is a modern visage of. He's like trapped in a past era in the way that he dresses and behaves is kind of what they're going for. To continue talking about Naoya here, and sorry if this sounds a little weird, I'm filming this a couple days after the rest of this, so sorry if I repeat stuff also from other sections. We're about to get into the film analysis section, and I do want to qualify before we get into that. I will say it again during that section, I think, in those recordings, but I'm not really like a film guy, so take everything that I say here with a grain of salt. But I wanted to point out this scene, because I think it is very, very interesting. And let me try to not get copyright claimed for having too much. Yeah, you see we go over Naoya's head out the window, and then we get this little flashback scene with him and Maki, and we end up zooming in on this. I think that this kind of shows us something really interesting about what they're trying to do with season 3, which is, and I think you could feel it moving into season 2. I think season 1 was just very standard anime visuals. The colors were fairly consistent and pretty bright, and there was nothing super spectacular going on, like cinematography-wise. In season 2, then, I think they kind of like leveled it up in hidden inventory, and especially in the Shibuya incident, they went for, in the Shibuya incident, like a much grittier feel, a lot more like, kind of just dark line detailing and stuff like that made it just kind of look a lot like dingier. And there were some shots that were just a little bit more like, for lack of a better term, cinematic. I think that they've really leaned into it in this season. The flashback scene is just such a classic anime cop-out, and normally you would just throw some white on the borders here, and you would have Naruto sitting on the swing, and, all's well and good, and you just kind of throw that in the middle of a conversation, as opposed to just cutting back and forth between the characters' faces. You just plop in 5 seconds of Naruto being like, the village rejected me, whatever. The choice to actually have the memory be coming up fluidly in the conversation represented alongside the characters, and have it be a movement out into this kind of like, empty space in the background of the courtyard here, makes that history feel a lot more like active and alive in the scene. And I think it's just generally like a more artsy choice, for lack of a better term again. But I think it's something that the animators are making a conscious choice to do. I think they're really leaning into the artsy-fartsy stuff in this season. And it's to try, I think, and create the effect of like a higher art going on here. Obviously I'm of the opinion that JJK is an incredibly well-written story. I've made multiple videos about it now. I will continue to make videos about it. But I don't think that that's always the general consensus of the community. I think a lot of people are on board with that, but there is a significant portion of the community who just don't view JJK like that. And in a lot of ways, I think shots like this, and then this one with Yuji and Hikari big time. I mean, look at the fluid movement going on here and all this. This shot is literally 5 minutes of just conversation, and they're just staying in this room. Camera doesn't change. It's just on these two here, and it's all on the animators to make the, fine movements of these two interesting, which is, I mean, they did such a great job with this. The movement could not look more realistic and beautiful, and I think it's great. We could talk about this frame and why it's so good forever, with the light source and, the shadows and all this that just light them up in a, really cool way. That's great film analysis right there, guys. Thank you. The lights light them up in a cool way. Awesome. But, the phone ringing here just constantly throughout the rest of this conversation, and, the kind of stillness, the no music, it's all just really super duper artsy. It's very independent film, super film bro-y. I don't even know. I don't have the vocabulary to talk about it, really, to be honest with you. But I think we know what I'm getting at here. It's just more like Western movie feeling. And I think that Western movies like this kind of just The Godfather and whatever, they get the credit of being really high tier art. They get put on that tier with the greatest artworks humanity has ever made. And I don't think that anybody is, outside of some people who are really riding hard for certain shows like Attack on Titan, I don't think anybody's really throwing their hat in for anime like that in general. And certainly not for Jujutsu Kaisen, which again has such a rep as kind of being like a battle shonen. This is kind of a crazy bold choice. And I mean, it's easy to make bold choices when you have Jujutsu Kaisen, which is just going to be a winner as a franchise, no matter what you do. But to instead just lean in, instead of really leaning into that kind of battle shonen, classic shonen aesthetics, to pull back from that and take this really way more cinematic take, this way more, again, kind of trying to evoke high art through the shots kind of take on this story, is I think to try and get people to engage with Jujutsu Kaisen like it is a great art form, because I think the second that you start really sitting down and trying to extract some value out of Jujutsu Kaisen, I think when you try to find what's great about Jujutsu Kaisen, you very quickly walk yourself into a lot of the stuff that I pointed out in this video and in my previous videos. Obviously, I have the opinion that Jujutsu Kaisen is, one of the best written stories in anime. And I think that they're using the aesthetics here to try and encourage more people to look more deeply into what the series has to offer in terms of substance from its writing. Okay, so we're doing a little bit of shot analysis here now. I don't know what section I put this in. I don't know where I just transitioned this from, so this transition is awkward. Sorry. But I wanted to talk about some of the shots because I think some of the internals of the Zenin Clan are just super, super duper interesting. What we see a lot from the Zenin Clan is, I'm sure a lot of us have heard, I'll draw this roughly, the rule of thirds. And generally the lines are supposed to be straight. The rule of thirds, where you, in film, you kind of think about splitting the screen into, sections of 3. You can also do this up and down is kind of the idea as well, do a line across the middle there and there. And this is kind of how you think about controlling space in a movie a lot of times, visual space, right? If something's framed up in the center, that's kind of naturally where our attention is going to focus on, and you'll see in some other shots that there's kind of a boundary here and a boundary here and then a figure in the center, so it kind of leads our eyes into the action that's happening in the middle. And something that kind of is interesting that they use a lot here is centering certain frames, either with really, really closed off sides, or this is a good example here because we can see that this kind of mirror, door, window, whatever situation is going on over here, this wall kind of blocks off the majority of this whole 2/3 of the frame, right? The left third and the middle third of the frame are totally taken up by this window over here. So we are almost visually trapped in. And of course, our subjects are over here, so this is kind of naturally where we would want to be. But we're almost trapped into a very tight space with Naoya and Maki here, which gives this room a really stuffy vibe, and it kind of, automatically draws us to the conflict between these two characters. Like, we feel like they're too close for comfort. Like, you know, this room ain't big enough for the both of us vibes. They're going to start breaking out in a fight at any moment because they're kind of squished into this space together. Since so much of the rest of the frame over here is occupied by just wall, the space that these two are allowed to exist in becomes absolutely minuscule, and it really feels cramped and stuffy and uncomfortable, which I think fits the vibe of the Zenin Clan overall as well. We can kind of see the same thing going on in this next shot. You know, another rule of thirds thing. Rule of thirds is very important. I really want to say, though, I'm not like a real film guy. I've taken like 3 film classes. This is just the most basic of knowledge. Like, this isn't anything crazy, but yeah, don't ever take my opinions on like film or, you know, art design or anything seriously. And, you know, don't think of me as an authority on this in any way. I just want to preface that, not that you were, but please make sure you don't. We can kind of see that the right third here is kind of enveloped by whatever's cow pattern is going on in the foreground. I guess it's probably just these trees repeated over here. And then this dark room, there's nothing going on in there, right? So there's nothing happening in this right third that we have to worry about. This left third is just foreground. It's doors. It's mostly dark. There's nothing really interesting happening over here. So again, our eyes are kind of funneled to this middle third, and, you know, even more so, we can again kind of see the leading lines with these doors, right? They're you know, they're kind of wider, and then they're narrowing into the background, which gives us the impression of distance, but it also gives us, you know, kind of a visual focus on Maki kind of exiting into this light source over here. This, you know, again, gives us the impression of stuffiness, crampedness. It's like an uncomfortable closeness with everything going on in here. And really, a lot of shots in the Zenin Clan you'll find are these same things, where a lot of the frame is occupied by just, you know, doors and walls and windows, and the space that the characters occupy ends up being extremely, extremely limited in the frame and extremely squeezed by the walls around them. And it kind of also gives this impression that Maki's kind of escaping as she heads toward this light source. And an interesting comparison shot, I think, to what's going on with Maki and the other scenes is this one with young Naoya seeing Toji for the first time. Again, we get the same kind of, you know, we'll draw our thirds lines. Goodness gracious, that is terrible. Let's get rid of that. We loosely have our thirds lines here. Again, middle thirds may be a little big in this, but, you know, we can kind of cross out the left and right thirds were drawn to the middle. And again, we could see these kind of leading lines with where the walls and the floors meet, you know, closing in to the middle of this frame to show distance, because that's how art works, apparently. I don't know. I can't draw for shit. You can tell by my little examples here. But again, they kind of get us into the door frame. It's the same, you know, setup as that last scene with Maki, where we've got the light source coming from the back, really dark elements in the foreground here. The stuff that's close to us is mostly in the darkness and is mostly just kind of walls. It's unimportant. It's not the subjects of our scene, Naoya and Toji. And this feeling of trappedness, I think in this shot, personally, to me, kind of gave a reversed feeling, where for the other ones, it felt like Maki was being kind of trapped in. She's being constrained by these walls. It's a really stuffy environment. I think the fact that it's Toji, as opposed to like pre-awakening Maki, kind of gives us this like aura of everybody is trapped in here with him. I don't know if that's just the story knowledge kind of overpowering maybe what's going on with the visuals here, but I think the fact that he's actually... Okay. Should be good now. My computer just crashed, so I was having some technical difficulties. Okay, I think I was here. I think I was talking about how in this shot we can kind of see that the line that Toji is standing on is sort of beyond the line of this wall here. So he is kind of outside of the confinement of these walls as compared to Naoya, who's the one who seems sort of trapped looking out into this space that Toji's occupying. Which I think to me kind of gives this sensation, since Toji's walking by, he's not really, that's how we know for a fact that he's not on this same line. but just visually, I think the fact that he's kind of behind where these lines are coming to a close gives the sense that he's not the one that's enclosed. It's Naoya and all of the stuff back here that is kind of enclosed by these walls, that Toji is, the one who is free. That kind of comes through in the shot a little bit because he exists behind the confining space that's been so important to the last, to the other shots inside of the clan with Maki. This is another thing that I kind of actually meant to include in my analysis of the dynamic between the sisters, but I kind of didn't get to, is that they kind of appear in like, maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but in a kind of like yin and yang-ish shape in a lot of these scenes. They're kind of like formatted in that same, like, whoop, whoop, we can kind of draw it out. Whoop, here. It's kind of like loosely that shape that they're represented in a couple of these scenes. And I think that's really interesting from, a character perspective, because we kind of get this, yin and yang is, kind of, as I think we all know, about the concept of balance and, how a little bit of one thing exists in everything else. And I think, maybe the black dot in Mai's white and the white dot in Maki's black is kind of cursed energy and a cursed technique versus a heavenly restriction. The little bit of each other that exists in both of them that maintains balance between the two of them as individuals is kind of the thing maybe that holds Maki back. And I think that's kind of the reason why, in the scene where Mai is bent over Maki and kind of is looking into her face, and then in this, we get that yin and yang format, because it kind of suggests to us that maybe the fact that these two are at balance is what is making them incompatible. Mai kind of talks about that with the fact that Maki, is working really hard and is trying to fight back against what's going on. She's trying to become a powerful jujutsu sorcerer, and Mai doesn't want to do that. Since Maki is defying the clan, Mai gets punished, and since Mai isn't defying the clan, Maki's power to defy the clan is almost limited. And it's limited in the literal terms, the fact that her heavenly restriction can't be fulfilled. And a heavenly restriction is kind of a good example of like total imbalance, because it's throwing away all of your jujutsu sorcery to trade it for maximum physical abilities. And it's almost like Maki has to achieve that state of total leaning into the physical abilities by getting rid of her counterbalance as a human being. But yeah, I kind of thought that the fact that they come up in these shapes was worthy of noting. I think it's an interesting detail. It's definitely, kind of the thing that Gege and this art team would definitely do. Them being set against this blood background is really interesting. Again, you could rule of thirds this up all day if you wanted to. They're certainly, middle thirded up here. And yeah, I think, the circular outline of the blood kind of helps in this moment with getting the impression of that yin and yang, that like, circle formation that they fall into internally kind of matches the external circle. And it kind of created that impression for me. I don't know if other people got that or felt that same way. But that was kind of something that I found with this scene. Again, the voice acting here in this scene when she's saying Mai's name over and over again, like 20 out of 10 voice acting performance. It's like genuinely one of the best voice acting performances I've ever seen in my entire life. It's just like so beautiful. There's so many little things about this shot that I absolutely love. Her hand still resting on her face from, before she died, when she was holding Maki. Her hand, being on the sword, like kind of handing the hilt to Maki, like we see, in the scene in whatever it is, Mai's innate domain, that kind of like soul space. They're kind of looking into each other's eyes, but we can only see Maki's eye. We can't see Mai's eyes. That kind of is helping to signal the death here. Not that we really need it signaled, but it is, we can see one looking at the other kind of looking at the ground. Yeah, just like a really, really super beautiful scene overall. Absolutely loved it. I think that's all I'll do for the film analysis section on this one, because it's going to be running really long. And back to probably the ending, or maybe one more section, I can't remember. Now, to get into like an actual like writing craft perspective, I want to say that I think Nobuaki, I don't know if you pronounce it like that, Nobuaki. I don't know, man. I think he's a masterful character in a lot of ways. We see him introduced with the Kukuru unit, and he kind of seems like a piece of shit. And this line where he basically says, "Let me get the final blow so my superiors will be happy with me," is a really strong line of dialogue, and it shows his priorities and exactly how much he respects his men and Maki, which is to say, not much. So very quickly from these couple of lines, we get the sense that he is a selfish guy, and he's constantly trying to appease the higher-ups within the clan. There's actually a good amount of character written into just a couple of lines for him. We really kind of get a sense of who he is. And then we also get into his perspective as he's processing Maki's power-up. And we're literally mid-sentence with Nobuaki when Maki rips out his throat and discards him. And I think this death, to me, felt super jarring on screen because I think we really get a little bit of a sense of who this guy is. And since we're getting his POV, like, you know, we're hearing his thoughts, we're getting his internalities as opposed to like Maki's thoughts in this moment, we're a little more connected to him than Maki in his last moments, even if we're rooting against him. Gege loves to use this technique in general to emphasize the strength of his characters. For example, we get Jogo's thoughts and internal stuff when he's fighting Sukuna, because in a way it kind of sets us against Sukuna, which is more like emotionally demonstrative of the fear of going up against someone like this. And since it makes us kind of feel like we're fighting against them, we're more conscious of how powerful and overwhelming they are. This actually kind of happens through a lot of this fight. We get the internalities of the people that Maki is killing, so we can kind of get a sense of how terrifying she is and how overwhelmingly strong she's become. Back to the music choice thing, the Kill Bill scene, that really light, like la 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 whatever shit. I personally thought it was a really good choice. I think that a lot of people were looking for a really dark, kind of somber tone in this scene because, I mean, Maki is killing a bunch of fucking people and you can kind of see it on her face. She's not exactly stoked about it. She's just lost her sister. It's not like she's just kind of having a good time cutting up on these guys. She's sliding around on blood, which is like pretty, you know, I feel like she's kind of styling on them a little bit, but I think that this more upbeat music isn't really for her and for her experience as much as I think it's kind of supposed to be for us as viewers, that we're supposed to look at this through a lighter tone. I think that's kind of what it was signaling to me, is that it was ultimately like the people creating this are trying to communicate with us that even if this is a really heavy, somber moment for Maki, in the greater scheme of the universe, what's happening in this moment is a good thing. It's positive. It's a new breath of energy into this world. Ultimately, it's a good thing. This music is really, it's kind of bouncy and it's kind of free flowing. And I think it's supposed to give us this impression when we're watching it of kind of emotional distance from the actual tragedy of all these deaths and kind of allow us to look at things with this extra added space where we can just appreciate Maki as a cool warrior who is destroying something that is ultimately bad. And I think it's kind of trying to give us the emotional distance to not sympathize with the people she's killing too much. What goes into this too is the Naoya replay moment, the like Mortal Kombat finisher she hits on him, is just kind of another affirmation of this point. Like, this is literally just the animation team being like, fuck Naoya, we hate this guy. We know you hate this guy and you want to see his face get punched as many times as possible. You want to see this dude die in the most graphic detail you can get. And, you know, again, I think it kind of goes back to just the free-spirited kind of loose energy that's supposed to be going on in this scene. We're supposed to be enjoying the downfall of the Zenin clan. We're supposed to be enjoying Naoya getting absolutely shit on. We're not supposed to have kind of an emotional closeness with these people. We're not supposed to overly empathize with these people. I think it's kind of a shot at the people who, you know, maybe are Naoya fans or are fans of certain people in the Zenin clan, that there's this kind of lighthearted music and they're totally getting styled on. It's kind of being like, if you like these people, we're waving this in your face. Look, the, you know, powerful woman is curb stomping these backwards traditionalist men and we're all having fun with it and there's nothing you can do about it. I think it's kind of like an intentional throw in the face of people who are, you know, like Naoya always pulls high in the popularity fan votes, and, you know, it's so weird because he's like the most detestable, annoying character of all time. And I think that, you know, this replay and his face just getting shattered into a million fucking pieces is kind of the animators being like, this is your boy, he's getting fucking dunked on. Anyway, that's it for my extra add-on ramble section. I hope this was a good one. Let me know if you want me to do more of the extra add-on ramble section. I think it's nice for me because it allows me to really extend the video for a long time without having to put in as much effort. Because I don't have all the time in the world. You know, I'm a studious young boy. If you liked the shot breakdowns and, you know, talking about, I don't know if this stuff with talking about Nobuaki and like voice and craft in terms of writing is something you guys are interested in. But if you are interested in more of that kind of real, I'm not, again, a master of film or writing by any means, but I can give you a little bit of something. If you're interested in that, please let me know. If you like this extra section, please let me know. Hopefully my Power and Politics video will be back up relatively soon. I have to re-edit that, which will take some time. It is an hour long, but, you know, I'll try my best. I'll see if I can fire that back out there. I cannot thank you all enough for showing up and supporting. It means the fucking world. This has been awesome. And yeah, I will see you to talk about Hikari and Kirara very soon.